Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you, and thank you for joining me once again for another spirit review video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the latest release from Redbreast, that being the PX Edition. Now the Pedro Ximenez Edition is kind of a special limited release from them. It may or may not come back depending on probably how popular it is, but initially this is going to be the one-time release, part of their Iberian Peninsula kind of celebration type thing. Because they're doing this new line focusing on that region of Spain and Portugal, which more than likely means they're going to be doing a lot of finishing from wine and fortified wine casks from that region coming up. But this is the first one, bottled at 46% ABV. Retail pricing on it's going to be about $110, $150 is what I kind of see them at. Let's see, what else do we need to know about it? Beyond that, the types, it's not aged entirely in PX casks. It actually starts its life like most Middleton Irish whiskeys, which is in ex-bourbon barrels, does the majority of its maturation time in those. Some of it is aged in sherry casks, and then finally it's finished in the PX casks for about, they say right over a year, okay? That's a pretty good amount of time for it to be in those casks. Alright, then I decided, you know what? I would like to compare it to the other sherry Redbreast that's easily available for everyone, this being the Redbreast Lustau. Now the Lustau has been a part of their line going back to 2016, and it is a standard part of their portfolio. Now I remember tasting this in 2016 and found it, you know, really nicely done. I thought it was a good solid value at the time, and then I never really got around to buying it. But you know, I don't get around to buying everything I taste. It's just too much out there, but I never did. And you know, along the way through the years since then, I've tasted it a time or two, and I think there's been a couple batches that weren't quite up to snuff. But here we are. I was about to shoot this PX, and then I thought, you know what? Let me go to the store. So I ran to the store, bought this Lustau, and you know, since it was, this is just yesterday by the way, and since it was freshly opened yesterday, what I ended up doing was taking my Glencairn, pouring it, and then putting a glass cap on it and letting it sit for several hours, because I was trying to kind of give it time to really open up, to kind of catch up to this PX, because this bottle has been open for probably almost a month now. So trying to get it to catch up, and that's where we're at right now. Okay, this is bottled at 46% ABV, retail price about $65. Does this kind of similar thing where it is majority in ex-bourbon, does go into the Lustau seasoned sherry casks for some time, okay? And that's how you get this. Both of these are non-chill filtered, non-colored. By looking at them, I would say the PX is just a smidge darker, but not by a lot. And really what this video kind of came down to was, in my head I was curious, is this bottle really worth 2 times the money that the Lustau is? So that's really what got this video going for me, and so I hope you enjoy it. But here we go. On the nose, starting with the Redbreast Lustau, 46%. Wow. Really sweet on the nose. So I get a lot of caramel, a little hint of like a brown sugar, but the sweetness, very confectionery. It almost reminds me a little hint of like, almost like cotton candy sweetness. But diving down into it, you really start picking up a lot of darker tones. You do get a lot of, to me, I get this kind of little nuttiness going on. Initially, I'm almost thinking pecans and almonds here. I do get a little bit of baked caramelized apples. Lots of pretty good amount of chocolate in here. There is a little bit of a little twang, and I think that's going to correlate to, there's a little bit of like a cherry and raspberry as well, and maybe a little citrus pop. There's the citrus, is actually on the edge of that glass, really nice. It's a little orange oil, a little lemon. Beyond that, a little bit of baking spices, so it's not just cinnamon. And that's it. It's pretty straightforward. A little bit of oak, but pretty straightforward. Really nice. Alright, so now I'm going to compare this right now to the PX. Wow, okay. Much darker on the nose. It still is sweet, as you'd expect it to be, because PX, Pedro Ximenez casks and wine is very, very sweet. But this is definitely darker. So this one, it has a lot of, I would almost call this one black cherry, blackberry, and maybe a little blueberry as the fruit tone component. And then you start getting a lot of dates and figs. Yeah. Oak level is about the same to me. It's not a ton of it. It's just a little, a little bit of it. It does have a little chocolate, but not as much as this one seemed to have. It's like stewed plums in this one, pretty plummy. Okay. Now let's get to the taste. Let me go ahead and pre-rinse for the Lustau. I like to do that since I know I'm going to rinse between the two. I usually like to go ahead and rinse right before I start. Okay, here we go. Nice. Okay. Wow. It really starts transitioning. That's nice. Wow, that's pretty nice, pretty cool. All right, here we go. Good solid medium viscosity, not much above that. Enters, it is sweet, but not super sweet, not cloyingly so. But it enters, and you get that little kind of caramelized and a little brown sugar. So you get the caramelized baked apples, you get the brown sugar component, you get a little bit of this kind of plumminess hitting up front. Wow. And then you start getting that little cherry and that raspberry in there as well. Now that's about the time when you start noticing the spice, the baking spices kind of starting to swell. And as that happens, you start getting a lot of dark chocolate, a lot of dark chocolate, I would say powder, kind of just cocoa just layering over the top of the thing. And then as it starts rolling over on the back end, that's where we really see it transition. And to me, I was starting to get a lot of dark chocolate and a lot of like an aged tobacco leaf as it was transitioning on the back end. Those two play really well together because I was still getting a lot of those pitted fruit components coming through. And you kind of focus on that little bit of orange oil, that little, maybe a little lemon twist. You do get a little bit of that layering underneath the whole thing as it kind of rides along. Matter of fact, if you focus on those citrus oils, you'll pick them up really early. But that's right about the time when all those fruits start jamming up everything. So that's really nice. And here you are, the spice swell. You get the cocoa powder dumping on. Aged tobacco leaf right about there. Heading into a nice little oak layer. On that back end is where you start focusing a little bit on that nuttiness. So you get the pecans, you get the almonds, and you get a little bit of walnut here, just to go along with everything. Now that walnut does add a little touch of, like a little bitterness to it, but it's not out of shape or anything. Again, this bottle is freshly open. I have a feeling once this bottle opens up, it's going to get really good, and that kind of like bitterness is kind of probably a little tamper down a little bit. Okay. Wow, really chocolatey on that back end. Alright, here we go with the Redbreast PX Edition. Oh yeah, that's really nice there. It didn't really nose sweeter than the Lustau, but the taste is just a touch sweeter, but maybe in a little different direction, where this one was more caramel driven. This one's more into like a brown sugar, almost like a carob tone. If you've ever had carob, that it's not quite chocolate. It's almost like a burnt molasses, that type taste. It's got a little bit of that going on up front. But it does feel very silky on the palate. So medium-high viscosity. It enters, you get a lot of those kind of, again, that black cherry, that blackberry, that little blueberry thing happening really early. There is a little bit of raspberry underneath that. Not nearly as much as there was in that one. Wow. And then as it hits that mid palate and you start seeing that kind of baking spice swell, that's pretty similar to the level as that one, because they are the same ABV. But as you see that happening, you get a little cocoa powder coming on top, but then it does not transition into that aged tobacco that this one was doing. So more than likely what I'm thinking is the Lustau seasoned cask this goes in does not necessarily go into these. These may be aging in Oloroso Sherry cask, but not the Lustau, because I'm not picking up that tone. Another difference between these two, this one was on the baked apples. This one, in with all those kind of berries and those kind of plum, fig, date things, there's a little bit of a poached pear. There's a little pear essence in this one. That's different. On the back end, you still end with that little bit of nuttiness that's similar to this one. But in this case, I would say this one's a little more on the almonds. Almonds and a little bit of the walnut, not the pecan. You still have a really nice oat, kind of laying the foundation. Also, you don't get as much citrus oil here. Overall, it's a very unique experience, and they are different, okay? Which one do I like better? I really like the transition here. I really like the dark chocolate and the aged tobacco leaf on the back end here. And for that price point, I do think I kind of really like this one. The PX, I'm happy with it. Luckily, I paid about $110 for this bottle. So if you can find it about there, that'd probably be my point for me. Because once it hits $150, I don't think it's really worth it anymore. Matter of fact, price point wise, I think this should have been, if this is $65, this should have been about $85, maybe $100, to be honest, as far as the quality. But that's just my opinion. I'm not running any things over there, so you know, it is what it is. But anyway, I thank you as always for joining me here on YouTube or Patreon. Of course, my patrons are going to get this video 2 weeks early. They're also going to get them ad-free. They're going to get a lot of bonus content that I add on to the back end of a lot of my videos. So join us over at patreon.com/LiquorHound if you're able. But if not, thank you for being here. Keep leaving all those great comments. I'll get to them just as soon as I can. Everyone, have a great day, and cheers.